do that.
Hi, everyone. So excited to have you all here. We are going to get started in just a few moments as folks are coming in, and would love if people could say in the comments or in the chat where you're coming from, whether that be the company or organization you're with. That would be great. Like your name and then organization that you're representing today on today's call. Hello.
Got folks from Oakland. Okay. Bay Area. I love it. I love to see it.
Nice.
I see. Jacksonville. Okay. Okay. Just gonna pause my video for just 1 second.
Philippines. Hello. Mabuhay. Everyone. Love it. Incredible. Awesome. All right. Cool. Well, we can get started because this is getting recorded, which is awesome. And this will be uploaded later on to the bigger Climate Career Week live stream and YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. Really excited to have this conversation with you all. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to be going through a few slides and we're going to have a fireside chat between the two of us about this topic of understanding the needs of green job seekers. So I'm going to just share my screen and kick us off. Okay, great. Amazing. So as I said before, today's talk is about understanding the needs of green job seekers. This is a conversation being hosted by Green Jobs Board in partnership with Climate Career Week. We are super excited to be hosting this event as part of the bigger conversations happening in this week's series. And just excited to have a guest joining us who will be introducing themselves in just a moment. So today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the current green jobs landscape, especially when it comes to green job seekers. We're going to be addressing the green skills gap and best practices that we're seeing for recruitment, hiring, and diversifying the upcoming green workforce. So whether you are a green job seeker yourself or you are a green employer, I believe that this conversation is going to be very enriching to talk about like what the current landscape is, what are the gaps and what are the opportunities. And so definitely feel free to take notes, have your questions ready. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end and definitely want to have a dialogue with you all so we can continue to address the gaps in this industry and continue to help it thrive. So who am I? So just to introduce myself, I am Chrissy Drutman. I am the co-CEO of Green Jobs Board, which I will be discussing a little bit more in the next slide on what that is. But essentially, I am a Jewish Filipina environmental entrepreneur, speaker, consultant. I've been working in climate for 10 plus years. I'm very passionate about improving accessibility to bring people into the climate space through storytelling and media. And I also have worked in JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Consulting, helping organizations and companies think through how to improve and create a more equitable workforce. And I'll pass it to my co-host.
Absolutely. My name is Shamie Cole. A pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm representing the Black Oak Collective as their Green Gateways fellow. I also support an organization that I lead called Sorrow Recycling. We're a clean tech startup where we actually build and deploy automated recycling units that pay people to recycle and also capture data on what's recycled to better understand consumer behavior. Super excited to be here today to share more about Black Oak's mission, the work that we do. We're essentially a Black environmental network that focuses on getting Black folks, into environmental careers and fostering a culture of collaboration, innovation, and career development, so we can see more Black folks like us in the green economy.
Amazing. So, what is Green Jobs Board? So, Green Jobs Board is an end-to-end career platform that empowers all job seekers with the education and tools necessary to build impactful careers that solve the climate crisis. We create accessible pathways and conversations that enable trust, transparency, and inclusion between our community of job seekers and employers. And so, yeah, you all can check out Green Jobs Board. Our website is greenjobsboard.us. We're really passionate about being able to create compelling conversations through education, content, and job listings to make it very easy and accessible for job seekers to find opportunities in the green career space. I believe the biggest thing that we're passionate about is actually understanding the needs of job seekers, mostly because my own journey was as a job seeker myself. I graduated from UC Berkeley a couple years ago, and I remember, I was in one of the top environmental programs in the world, and I remember going to my career counselor just by having all this passion and all this knowledge and not really knowing how I was going to build, a long-term thriving career in this industry. There just wasn't clear information, pathways, knowing even
Kirsty, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. We can't see your slides. It still says loading on the screen.
Oh, can you all not see my slides? Oh no, no one told me. Okay, let me see. Have you all not been able to see it this whole time?
I think it's still loading. If you want to just hit the refresh button, and I think it's.
Oh no, no one told me. Okay, wait, let me do that again. Oh geez. Okay, we're gonna do that again. Let me know if that works or not for you all. Let me just, okay, can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. But then if I click present, does that not work? Okay, let me see. Does that work?
No, we're seeing a loading.
Okay, but that works. Oh man, I don't know why. Okay, well, I'm not sure why it won't show the bigger screen, but I guess we'll just go through it this way. Oh man, okay. Well, I guess you all did not see any of these slides that I've been sharing, but now you can see these.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, oh man. Okay. So backing up, this is understanding the needs of green job seekers. As I was saying, this is our discussion. These are our headshots. This is explaining Green Jobs Board. And then, yeah, back to what I was saying before. Thank you for letting me know that you all couldn't see my slide. But as you can see, this is our website. So you all can look at greenjobsboard.us. You can check out our website. I'll drop it in the chat later. But our tagline is find your climate space. We're really passionate about making it a lot easier for people to find green job opportunities and make it really categorical and easy for you to sort through. And back to what I was saying before I found out about the side thing, like I said, I had a lot of issues on finding a green job and green career pathway when I was finishing university. And I decided to take that matter into my own hands through my media platform and started curating resources where I was just going online, gathering different information and resources. And people were really excited about it because they're like, it's been so hard for me to source and find opportunities in the climate space. And now this is finally like a resource and opportunity for me to get involved in this space. And eventually from social media, our platform turned into a company. because enough companies and organizations found that it's been really difficult to communicate and reach job seekers. And we were finally providing an avenue and a space that was prioritizing the experience of a job seeker. And today we want to dive deeper into like why that's important and why it's important to view things from the perspective of job seekers if we really want to improve this industry. So the problem as we see it is that the climate industry is the largest growing field to address the enormity of the climate crisis, but there's a lack of a clear bridge between prospective employees and companies hiring across the expansive green economy. And you know, there's a huge opportunity with all this because 40% of Gen Z and millennials say that they would switch their jobs if their current employer was not doing enough to address the climate crisis. And yeah, we see that like there's a lot of trends these days that working on the green transition and climate adaptation is going to have positive impacts on, you know, the green transition and on job growth. And yeah, this is also a diagram that shows that like there is a huge employment shift and that overall it's going to be a net positive to move towards, you know, clean energy technologies. And yeah, we're saying that there's, you know, fastest growing green jobs, having good salaries, from being a solar PV installer to a wind turbine technician, working in waste removal and waste management, so on and so forth. And from our research and experience, these are some desirable jobs for job seekers that we've been seeing, which is working on air quality, auditing, landscape architecture, solar installation, working in transportation planning, and so on. But with all that being said, I want to talk about the green skills gap. Basically, the green skills gap is this idea that even though we do have like a growing, you know, climate sector and a lot of opportunities emerging, at the same time, there's not enough folks that are trained up and have the skill set to work in these jobs. And this is like according to LinkedIn's Green Skills Gaps report, but they found that, you know, globally green hiring is outpacing hiring in 2023, which is very exciting. We are seeing that there is a lot more opportunities, but again, like it's difficult to be able to fill these jobs if people don't have the skill set. And we do see that like these are a lot of the skills that are continuing to grow, which is exciting, like carbon accounting, water quality, energy engineering, energy auditing, etc. But a lot of these require like certification, training, upskilling, and not enough companies are necessarily providing like the resources or funding to make that possible for the up and coming workforce to participate in that. And yeah, we're finding that green skills are often required in traditionally non-green jobs. So there's a huge opportunity here for, you know, green skills to be, you know, more translatable in different workspaces. But again, it's like we have to develop that language for different workspaces to embrace being green or like incentivize those kinds of things and those kinds of trainings in order to make that possible. And yeah, according to Economist Impact, the top 3 obstacles right now to acquire green skills by workers is not enough time to spend time on learning new courses, because like I said before, a lot of these up and coming technologies and companies that exist are going to require new certification, new types of pedigrees. And yeah, if you don't have the money or the support, especially if you already do have a college degree, what are your incentives to maybe like get additional education in this field? That needs to be fixed. Another thing is not sure of how new skills will benefit me. So again, unless a company or an organization is building an incentive structure to where those skills are going to lead to greater job prospects or a raise or, you know, more professional development opportunities, why would you want to skill up in that way? And the last thing is lack of opportunities to practice skills learned. So let's say your company or organization does have a professional development fund where you are getting trained in these skill sets and going into this space, but then you might not necessarily be able to actually apply that to the field unless it's circumstantial or there's a specific case or project to do that. So again, it's like even if you do train people in these skills, how do you make that scalable? How is that going to actually cultivate their leadership in the long term? These are all things that like need to be determined for sure. And so I'm going to go to the next. And then, you know, in this industry, we also have to talk about the significant lack of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in this field. This is a report from Green 2.0, and they found that among 40 green major nonprofits, only 20% of their staff identified as people of color, and only 21% of their senior staff identified as people of color. And when we're talking about resource distribution and leadership, especially when it comes to you know, everything from leadership, like executive leadership to people who run boards, we have to talk about diversity and inclusion. And similar numbers we saw through philanthropy, that environmental foundations only have 25% of their staff identifying as people of color, and only 4% of their senior staff identifying as people of color. And so when we're thinking about deploying climate solutions and climate technologies and what's getting funded and who's getting staffed, we have to realize that there's been historic inequities in this industry that is preventing more people from entering it. And this isn't just from a leadership standpoint. We see this even systemically, whether that be unpaid internships, lack of fellowships, lack of clear training programs and structures to get people involved. All of these things contribute to a growing gap that makes the climate industry and getting to work into it still a very gate-kept space. And yeah, we need people who care about these things, because, you know, people, especially young people, are, you know, getting their information on things like social media, getting into these spaces to talk about these things, and finding opportunities. And just to skip ahead to this, you know, what Green Jobs Board is trying to do to address this gap, or at least starting to, is, you know, the fact that like we did create a curated audience on social media that has a lot of the diversity that a lot of these companies and organizations are looking for. Right now, we reach around 130,000 job seekers across the internet, and more than 83% of our audience identifies as women. And we receive around 330,000 impressions on our platforms each month. And so what we're finding is that by increasing the volume and visibility of opportunities and making it more accessible for people to go on these platforms, more diverse talent feels like they have a seat at the table, that they can participate in these conversations, and, you know, feel confident in applying for more jobs in this industry. And so, yeah, like I mentioned before, Green Jobs Board, we're really focused on making a better user experience, making it easy for people to find opportunities. We push things like salary transparency, highlighting BIPOC-owned organizations and businesses, only promoting paid opportunities and prioritizing that for the most part, and making sure that we're also creating avenues of accountability on our platforms by, you know, having people have the open conversation of like, do we like that salary? Do we like working at that place? And making those conversations a lot more honest and transparent. And yeah, like I said, you can check out our website at greenjobsboard.us. But, you know, our whole thing we realize is there's just not enough storytelling, not enough mentorship for job seekers. And we need to have more people, you know, addressing this issue if we really want job seekers to feel empowered and to stay in the industry. And just to finish this off, I just want to say some things that I feel are needed to bridge the gap, which we're going to talk about more about in our fireside chat, is that there needs to be better storytelling and communications regarding green career pathways and green skills building opportunities. There needs to be more training and accountability within environmental organizations who want to recruit, retain, and empower diverse staff. And lastly, there needs to be greater funding and support, especially of young people in this space, to attend conferences, networking events, and to have access to things like paid internships, paid fellowships, and easier pipelines when they exit university, if employers really want to make it possible and feasible to have and retain good talent for many years to come. So yeah, that's the presentation I wanted to start with. But now we're going to go into a fireside chat between the two of us, where we're going to dive into more of these topics around equity, empowering job seekers, and just, get into it on like how the labor force in the climate space needs to shift. So I would love if you could start us off. If you have any initial, reflections based on your work in the labor force and seeing, what's been going on in the climate industry from that presentation, where you're seeing the shifts needing to happen in this industry.
Absolutely. I love what you mentioned in relation to the statistics and the trends that you brought up. I feel like it really uplifts this duality that we're living in, where we're seeing workers that are more and more passionate about climate than we've ever seen. But we're also in the midst of this growing green economy that boasts so much opportunity, right? So we have the folks that are interested, we have the opportunities that are coming up, but there's still that gap, right? And we see that especially with BIPOC workers, where we see workers that face daunting rates of unemployment, of underemployment. We have folks that have degrees, that have studied, that have put so much time and effort into getting connected to projects and internships, and still aren't able to secure these roles, right? And the fact that there is this gap that still exists in relation to being able to get these roles, right? Being able to fill, being able to get trained in relation to the skills that are evolving in this workforce, right, truly creates a daunting problem that requires all voices to be a part of it. And so in relation to the work that we've seen around labor, I think, this is a really interesting conversation that kind of intersects at, this labor justice standpoint, this worker rights standpoint, this representation in the green workforce standpoint. And honestly, I'm really excited to kind of look at how can we enlist and engage workers that have real lived experience, right, around the climate crisis themselves, right? I think those workers, right, who are us, right, who want to be a part of creating a dynamic solution, really need to have an opportunity to engage in spaces like this. And so I'm excited to talk about kind of resolving the gaps and how we can bring some of the strong intentions from what we've seen statistically and via the trends, and how we can kind of really all play a role in building an equitable climate workforce.
Yeah, I would say that, like, the biggest issue that I'm currently seeing is that there is just a deep lack of education and accessibility to bridge the gap for a lot of people. I would say that a lot of people are very passionate, but they don't necessarily have the toolkits and the information to know like how to take that next step. And I think the biggest thing that I'm realizing needs to happen is there needs to be a clear inventory of what are the green skills that are happening, like to have just like more of like a real-time update where people are saying, these are the up and coming trends of the industry. This is how things are evolving. These are the skills that you probably want to take note of. Here are current courses and certifications. I feel like a lot of these things are happening in real time, but we're not necessarily getting updated on it in the
Absolutely.
rate that we need to be. And so I think there needs to be more spaces like that. I would say like the kinds of education that I think is like going to be more necessary is it's going to be very like sector specific, but I think even when we're thinking about building infrastructure, right? Like building clean energy infrastructure, building battery plants, being able to like build manufacturing facilities to push out, solar panels and wind turbines and to pull, make this huge transition happen. We're going to need there to be like more localized training hubs and training centers where people are going to be able to maybe get trained in less than a week or two, right, to work on their first like install. And we're going to need people who are then building systems that after someone goes through that initial training, it's like, okay, then where do they go from there in their career trajectory? How are we going to make sure we're like increasing the pay scale, increasing the incentives for them to want to get into higher leadership roles? It's not like, oh, I'll just be stuck in this job for like 5 to 10 years and there's no chance of mobility, right? And so I think that's a big way that the industry needs to shift. So I would say education wise, what goes into my mind is like building more accessibility around certification. Because I think these programs already exist. There's a lot of trainings that do exist. There's a lot of certification programs that exist. but they're like cost prohibitive. To go to some of these classes to get trained in it, you have to have access to good transportation, for example, things like that. I've seen some case studies of state and local governments partnering with like companies and initiatives to make it a lot easier to incentivize local community members to be able to go to trainings like this and to get, you know, the education necessary to like participate in the sector. But again, like that's like a whole systemic issue that needs to be addressed. So I just wanted to bring that up. And it really depends on like the job, the sector, and the industry. But yeah.
And I think what you're saying really relates as well to recruitment and how we need to change and shift our approach to recruitment. I think we think of it right now as a very extractive process. We post a job and someone applies and that's it, right? But I think we need to start thinking about recruitment and education as a continuum, right? How are we growing the field of workers from an earlier age, right? To start learning these skill sets, right? To really take education outside of the classroom and invest in experiential learning opportunities, right? Like education can happen in relation to learning these skills and a building a practice around getting comfortable with these new problems, with these new challenges that the industry is facing. They can be experienced, by youth, by giving them the opportunity to start solving and thinking about complex and interesting problems, right? That looks like research projects. That looks like competitions, right? That looks like, again, giving students the opportunity to be in the boardroom. We're talking about the latest environmental reports, right? Or we're on the engineering floors and looking at, how is the process changing, right? And how can youth and other folks and workers of all ages, right, contribute to the pace of industry. And right, I think education is really important, and that relates to, again, that partnership between industry and education. And not to toot my own horn, but Black Oak does some incredible work around educational engagement around Black workers. I actually help lead our program called the Green Gateways program, where we go to colleges in the DMV area, and we sit and we speak with Black students that are interested in building a career in this field. And we have an opportunity to hear them dream, right? We want to hear what they want to do and how do we connect the dots so they can actually get there, right? And so there's so much in this field when we think about recruitment and bringing folks into the space and preparing them to be able to take that role, right? Because ultimately industry needs to create the next generation of environmental leaders and decision makers and engineers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a real conversation about recruitment, and there's so much to unpack there that I'm sure we can continue to talk about.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity that companies and employers in this industry haven't tapped into, and that like there's just like a hungry workforce out there that like wants to be in these roles, but they just find that there's a lot of barriers to entry. Like if you require someone to have 5+ years of experience or like a master's or a PhD to like be in a role, but then you want more diverse talent and you want people to be XYZ thing, and you're not addressing the system that is preventing from more people entering into it, you're really missing out on a huge opportunity to cultivate the next generation of leadership. I think yes, there's some things that you have to identify that maybe are a must have, right? Like with a training, and you're like, okay, I don't want to delve in my budget to like put in all this extra effort to train someone up who maybe does have that experience, right? But let's say someone is an amazing culture fit and they have amazing other skills that like the rest of your team doesn't have because they have a diverse skill set. Why not make that investment in training them in maybe a specific technical skill if they have other skills, right? So like you have to kind of like create a bit of a balance in weighing skill sets and identifying the value of having a diverse workforce and understanding that people can have both, and that like there is the ability, if you feel like someone is just like almost there but they need to be trained in XYZ thing, like I think you as an employer these days I think should understand the longer term longevity of that like you're investing in someone who's going to want to cultivate that leadership over time and not just leave. Because Gen Z and young people have been following this quiet quitting trend where it's like people are just not going to put up with a workspace that doesn't feel good to them anymore. They're going to switch to a company that provides more benefits or more opportunities. So in this day and age, you kind of do need to make your workplace a bit more competitive and appealing to be able to retain a decent workforce that like you can train and to build that leadership long term. And I know that's like a mindset shift, but I think it's going to be really necessary if we're going to like, be able to do the work we want to do. And
Yeah,
so, yeah. Oh, if you want to add on to that, I have another question for you though.
actually, let's keep going.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, speaking about like workplace culture and being able to create a work culture, I talked about professional development opportunities, but what are you seeing as like other needs that like employers could be considering to make their workplace more palatable or attractive to recruit and retain talent?
I think it's a great question. I think it first looks like one, listening to the workers that already are in the workplace. I think there's not often enough of a conversation and communication occurring with current BIPOC workers that are in those spaces. They often don't feel like their voices are heard, right? Sometimes there aren't ESG groups, or there are ESG groups that aren't even given a budget, right? And I think what we need to do to create a more palatable workspace, one that celebrates diversity, one where folks feel like they have a voice that really matters in conversations as it relates to the culture of the company. I think it really comes by empowering them to, one, feel like they have a strong contributing voice to the culture of the office, but also having the courage as an employer to experiment, right? Give folks the reins, right? To try things out, to voice their opinion, to talk about what makes them feel comfortable and what doesn't, right? And I think that level of understanding, that level of conversation, that level of transparency ultimately creates a space where folks feel like they can be themselves, right? Like, how many workers are often feeling like they have to put on a different voice or a different version of themselves, right? That's not something that we can sustain as we move forward with today's workforce, right? Folks want to be able to be in a space where they feel like they can be creative, where they can speak their true, authentic thoughts, right? Where they feel like they have a community, right? And so I think in relation to, again, creating a culture of a place where folks feel welcome, folks feel at home, I think it really comes down to having those specific conversations with workers and, empowering them to meet during work hours, right? As a group, as a coalition, and talk about the things that they want to prioritize, right? And give them a budget, right? It's not about, creating these symbolic spaces where folks can just, where folks don't really have the ability to do things, right? Like, let's give them a budget. Let's give them a voice in the conversation that can actually contribute to the culture.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and if we can just, I know we hit the last question and we're moving, but I think there was a really important piece that we talked about in relation to kind of growing the workspace. I think, when we're talking about the future of, BIPOC folks, in climate careers, I think we also really need to think about who are our folks that are channeling and leading recruitment, right? Who are these ambassadors bringing in talent into our organizations, right? Because I think we don't often invest in diversity, even in that type of role, right? Because there is the presence of conscious and unconscious bias, when in these application systems, right? And there are so many BIPOC professionals that already feel scared just by listing their name when applying for a role. And so I think it's so important, right, as we're looking to grow this field of diverse workers in relation to this green economy, we need to tackle some of the challenges and issues that we've seen systemically that have led us to the fact that we have these lack of representation in this field just generally. And so it's really important to have real sustainable and strategic DEI goals as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think being able to, have goals and accountability and structure for like how you want to retain talent in the long term is something that more organizations really need to be thinking about. And I think, on top of that, someone in the, Q&A and comments box was saying, you know, right now, a lot of the opportunities that are available are only open to people with a PhD, and there isn't an equivalent. You have specific experience relevant to the posting or like X number of years of experience where you can apply. And so I think it's also important to identify that it is very cost restrictive, time restrictive, so many barriers to entry to require people to have a PhD, when like a lot of this industry is just evolving so quickly. And like we said, like if these skills are constantly being updated and the industry is being updated, then why are you as like a workplace having such rigid boundaries around like your job application process, right? Of who you view as an expert. And of course, we have these metrics of like how we measure expertise, but I think we have to have other avenues, whether that be certification, training, like internal structures to measure that, and to be collaborative. I think if you don't have that, then you're really limiting the percentage of people who could possibly be in any of these positions. And you may have a role that like never gets filled for months to a year. And I've heard that happen before, where it's like,
Actually,
oh, we have this open role, no one can fill it. But then it's like, is there any opportunities for us to address that? Because like the work needs to get done. And it's like waiting on a year or two to fill a role because someone doesn't have this like credential is kind of wild to me. So
no,
yeah.
that's such a fair point. And I think, as the problems we're solving are evolving, our recruitment practices have to do as such, right? Because we're missing out on so many talented folks that don't have that one credential or haven't attended that one school, right? But they still have that comparative genius, right? Or that experience and heart for this issue, right? That is so important at the end of the day to get these things done. So we need to be more agile. We need to think differently. We need to be more progressive employers as it relates to who we're bringing in and who we're hiring.
100%. And yeah, I would love anyone who like wants to put comments or other thoughts, like if you are a job seeker or if you're a company that like maybe has struggled with this, would love to hear your insights on like where you're seeing the gaps or like what you want to understand more of when it comes to job seekers. Feel free to drop it in the Q&A. Yeah, someone asked, do we have any tactics specifically to recruit BIPOC employees going into particular communities, recruiters of the same ethnicity, etc.? Love that question. I would say a really important part is collaborating with organizations and institutions that already are doing that work to bridge that pipeline. And so, I think Black Oak does an amazing job. I mean, not to speak to Black Oak, but I think Black Oak does a great job on, tapping into HBCUs or historically Black colleges. I don't want to get that wrong. And, tapping into that network of, universities and institutions that are reaching, marginalized communities. I think similar with like Green Jobs Board, a lot of my community online comes from marginalized communities who like follow me and have interacted on social media and things like that. And so, Green Jobs Board and like our community has been, really promoting and creating the space for more BIPOC talent to find opportunities, for example. So I would say institutions like Green Jobs Board, Black Oak Collective, Black Girl Environmentalists, lots of other institutions that currently already exist and are doing workforce development that is putting minorities first. I think being able to like partner with us, invest in our programming because we're already doing that targeted recruitment, I think is great. And it shows like your allyship and, solidifies, our expertise as collaborators in the space. So I'd say that's the first thing, like explore where you're posting, who you're partnering with, the institutions you're collaborating with, what populations you've been reaching out to, because a big thing I keep hearing in the climate space is that people hire their friends or people who know someone who knows someone. But again, that's typically like a boys club, and it's usually a white boys club, and it doesn't necessarily like bring more diverse talent and voices into the room in the discussion. So I think it's important to address like where some of those barriers to entry may exist and how you are actively investing and making sure that you're creating different opportunities for more diverse talent to find out about your opportunities.
Absolutely. And I want to say this as well. I think, just via being in the space with us, us as organizations, Black Oak, the organizations that are putting this work together, connect with us. Let's build together. Let's make sure that we're approaching this in the spirit of community. And we have so many opportunities, whether it be, some of our happy hour events where we can connect in a more social environment and learn about you. We also have office hours where we, pull out the resumes and we'll go through it and look at the cover letters and look at jobs that, directly correspond to your interests and to your skill level. We have volunteering opportunities where you can also meet relevant employers that are also doing critical work that you might be interested in. And so we want to extend that arm towards you. And let's take our space, right, as a community. Let's build together. Let's work together. Let's understand each other, and let's do it.
Amazing. And someone else said, I've been really struggling to just find what types of jobs are out there in the green job space. I'm in a career transition. It's been difficult to see what type of certification or grad degree I might need if I don't know what's even out there. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, there's just such a huge information gap. So I would say, Green Jobs Board, like we're really trying to make that more transparent by showing what opportunities are out there just to give people a starting point on like, these are examples of type of jobs you could be applying to. These are examples of companies and organizations, because just that visibility alone is like lacking. And then on top of that, I think the next step is creating visibility for things like certifications, grants, and yeah, maybe for companies with their job descriptions to be more clear on like, is there training available for a certain skill, or is it absolutely required? Or, I think there needs to be something more embedded in the interview process and the application process that creates more of that space. And then, also, again, like having things like incubators and fellowships. So it's like you're actively putting in the resources to maybe source the talent and train them. So by the time they come out of a certain process, that like they're up to par with what you're looking for. And you're able to get into that. So I would say that like, the biggest thing I would recommend is like continuing to tap into different job boards and different, organizations that are trying to curate these resources as like databases you could be tapping and pulling from. Definitely recommend Green Jobs Board to check us out, because we're really trying to fix that issue in particular. And I would say subscribe to like Google Alerts. Subscribe to Google Alerts for climate jobs, or like type in the specific job title that like you're interested in. I think is really helpful. Also going on LinkedIn and typing in maybe some keywords of jobs or positions you're interested in, and start making lists of like those keywords of like, this is the type of industry, this is the type of position, and start connecting with some of those employees that work at those different spaces, or try to, search and find mentors in the industry can really help you with that journey too. Okay, great. And someone else asked, any tips for bringing marginalized communities more into the climate conversation and feel welcome, especially community members versus conservation professionals? Do you want to answer that one?
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I think that's a really great point there, right? There's kind of a divide at points between, concerned community members and folks that, just want to be a part of solving the climate crisis and having an impact in their local, communities, counties, states, et cetera. And folks that are, very, white coat about it, right? Or very white collar about it. I think, again, we are in this to democratize the space, right? To give a voice to all folks, right? Whether you're in a climate position or not, right? And if it's your interest to be in those spaces as well, we want to be able to facilitate that for you. And so Black Oak is very passionate about our volunteering opportunities, right? Where we have a lot of conversations, where we actually do community-based action around environmental causes as well. And I think those create these unique opportunities for us to talk with community members, to also kind of just dissect our own experiences in relation to, how we've been affected by the climate crisis, right? In a way that's, outside of professional decorum, right? In a way that's real, in a way that's sensitive, in a way that is, backed by trust, right? And so I think again, I want to shout out organizations that are doing that work, and I think I want to see everyone, connecting and commenting and coming to the next volunteering opportunities, because we want to see y'all there and we want to have these conversations. But what I would say is, for folks that have tried to have these conversations and have been met with, again, kind of the sharp back of professionalism or folks that are not as inclusive. I want to say that there is a home with Black Oak and with other organizations like us that really uphold those values of really building an equitable and inclusive environmental movement as well as a green economy.
Yeah, I just also want to plug that last year, Black Oak Collective, Black Girl Environmentalists, and Green Jobs Board, we hosted our first annual BIPOC Green Career Summit, and that was for young people that do identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color in the climate space to meet up and talk about the nuances of navigating that identity while also being in the climate space. And we plan to host another one later this year. So definitely follow us on social media to stay tuned for that if that's something of interest to you. But I think it's really important to build things like affinity groups in your company and organization. Make sure that you have spaces to be able to talk about these things even outside of work. Make sure that you're having the space with like your support system to talk about things like salary negotiation, salary transparency, workplace power dynamics, all these things. It's really important to make sure that you have that support system and understand that like you as a worker have those rights and you have the right to advocate for those things in your workplace as well. Yeah, amazing. And then, okay, another question is that I'm about to graduate this June with a degree program of a BS in biology in environmental biology. I want to expand my horizon by seeking internships abroad. However, I'm having a hard time since the rising job demands are environmental engineers, and the only job experience that I have is science communication. So basically, I write specifically sustainable business environmental topics. Do you have any advice on what courses and certifications that I have to take and able to go in line with what they're asking for? Yeah, I mean, I would say at least from like, a field research position, it is a little bit difficult due to like from what I know, like citizenship and like work permits. So it might be challenging for you to get a full on like research position. But I at least know that, yeah, like if you continue working on environmental communications and like building out like your own blog and like, building out like maybe some, like collaborations with organizations. I know people are like constantly looking for copywriters. And so there could be a big opportunity for you to reach out to more organizations. I think I'd recommend in that case to reach out to organizations focused on science communication and journalism, like on LinkedIn or even on, like X or Twitter or whatever, and maybe like reach out and like see, where are the writing opportunities. And like sometimes there are some platforms where they're constantly looking for, environmental experts. And I think maybe you could sign up for one of those platforms and like lend your voice like when a topic springs up. And so then the more you build your portfolio, maybe you'll be able to land a position with like a US based organization. And yeah, oh, I love that. Yeah, I would also consider startups as well. So yeah, like there's a lot of like for-profit companies that are always looking for copywriters and people that can do translate technical writing and things like that. So I would look into that too. Awesome. And then another question is Coursera, EDX, and others have sustainability analyst / technology theme certification. How relevant are these third-party certifications and micro credentials? It really, versus organization-specific trade group credential. I would say right now, working with like something that is like state sanctioned or like sponsored by a government entity and in and of itself, like right now, will always like kind of have more credibility just due to the nature of like companies maybe like looking to check that box and know that you went through a specific certification that's been verified. But I have seen more companies accepting the validity of more of these micro credentials, especially when it comes to like a skill set that like shows that you are trainable in a certain set of technical skills. So maybe it's not necessarily that it's going to like, fill that gap, but it shows that you're on like that line of thinking. And then a company or organization may be more inclined to hire you because you have that background in that industry, from what I've seen at least. Amazing. And yeah. And then someone said organizations in Monterey Bay that focus on community organizing. I mean, I don't know any off the top of my head, but if you message me on LinkedIn, I'm sure I could probably connect you with someone who may have some connections for that. Amazing. Does anyone else have any other questions? These are great. And if not, I did want to say that I dropped all of our contact information in the chat. Our website's greenjobsboard.us and their website's blackoakcollective.org. And you can follow us, Green Jobs Board and Black Oak Collective, on social media as well.
Maybe just one more question to close this out. Would love to ask you, what are your hopes for the next generation of the BIPOC green workforce, right? And what advice do you have for green job seekers who are looking for roles today?
I love that question. I would say, like, my hope in the future is that we have the resources and support to create a more diverse workforce that actually does prioritize like the most marginalized communities. Because if we prioritize that and we put funding towards building the infrastructure and opportunities in those communities, we are going to be able to see the just transition that we want to see in the time that we're going to see it. By focusing on the communities that have been the most left out of the conversation, we are creating opportunities for leadership, mobilization, and transition that we've never seen before. And it's a huge opportunity that I think all people, especially young people, have a huge opportunity to tap into. And I hope people feel confident in that moment. I hope that employers also create the conditions for those folks to continue feeling confident as they're building in this space. And I'd say the last thing for any job seekers out there who maybe feel really disillusioned and scared in their job search, I would say there's so many people that are in your corner. And I think it's important to find mentors in this space who, want to support you and give you more knowledge and to connect the dots for you. And I think in that relationship building process, you're going to learn so much about yourself. And hopefully it builds the confidence that you are going to be the leaders of the future.
Absolutely. I think it's an excellent response. I think just adding my own 2 cents. And at the end of the day, I think early engagement is just so key for these communities that, want to be able to get in these spaces. And I think, we need to facilitate those intentional partnerships between industry and higher education and even primary education, right? Like, I think back about one of my earliest climate roles. I was a climate organizer with an organization called the California Public Interest Research Group. And essentially I was an annoying person getting folks to sign petitions around solar energy as well as water quality and whatnot. And that work of connecting with community, of having powerful conversations about the future of climate, really gave me, the base and foundation of my skill set, right? It really trained me as an entrepreneur, as a researcher, as someone who does this work in relation to organizing and hopefully wants to seek public office one day. And so I think it's really important to, again, build these early engagements, right? Think about how can we facilitate these partnerships. Experiential education is so important. And so, Black Oak Collective is really invested in all that work and, would love to connect with folks here today to make sure that is something that's available to them. And we're really, really appreciative of the opportunity to have this conversation and excited for the work that goes ahead.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining our discussion today. The recording will be available on Climate Career Week's live stream series. And thank you for joining us for Climate Career Week and understanding the needs of job seekers. Please stay in touch as we continue our journeys to improve accessibility for job seekers all around the world. Thank you and have a great afternoon and evening. Bye, you guys.